little?
Never.
Any tips that you would give to waiters right now who are experiencing the ups and downs of the economy? I mean, you've been doing it for 35 years.
Mm-hmm.
What's a tip? What do they do? How do they remain optimistic and stick with the job?
Well, hard work for one. Two, grooming is another good thing. And I try to tell some of the guys that don't patronize, because we do have a lack of etiquette as far as gratuity is concerned. I have seen cases where a person will pay their check and the waiter will say, "Do you want any change back?" I said, "That's a no-no.
Right.
Don't do that." See, the word tip means to ensure promptness. So you do the best you can and expect nothing in return.
And if you do that?
You're going to make it. They're going to give you more.
All right.
Because, it is an industry of gratuity.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your illustrious career. Congratulations on your award. Manny Felix, an icon in Hollywood at Musso and Frank's.
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm just your humble servant. Thank you.
Thank you, Manny. I'm Sharon Jimenez, and that's LA Business Today. Creativity and hopeful attitude is likely to keep restaurant owners striving to survive the economic crisis.
And the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, of course, not likely that business is going alone in these swollen waves of economic bad news.
Los Angeles has one of the hardest working, ethnically diverse populations in America. And each day we learn a little more about ourselves as we look inside our collective hearts and minds for the right compass to guide us through these tough times.
And here's the word, Sharon: hope. The possibility of change. That's what LA seems to be hoping for. I'm Bob Jimenez.
And I'm Sharon Jimenez. Thank you for joining us for LA Business Today.
Awesome. Fantastic. Woo! It's LA. Yes!
It's all good.
It's LA.
We're building bikes.
With Election Day almost here, it's a good idea to know where to vote.
Turn right, turn right, turn right.
You can find the location of your polling place on the back cover of your official sample ballot, or by logging onto the Election Division website, or calling 888-873-1000. Otherwise, you'll never know where you'll wind up. Make a note. Know where to vote.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting for Friday, May 8th, 2009 of the Ad Hoc Committee on Economic Recovery and Reinvestment. This is the Council Committee, which is working closely with our city departments and the Mayor's Office on our applications for grants for our recovery monies at the federal and state levels. Today we have 3 items on the agenda. I know Ms. Perry is going to need to leave a little bit early. I should establish we have a quorum with Mr. Parks and Mr. Rosendahl, as well as Ms. Perry and myself. And so if we can take up items 2 and 3 together first, please. Good morning.
Good morning. Bill Kreitz of the CAO's office. But as you said, Mr. Chair, in the interest of time, we will skip immediately to item 2 and item 3, and we have the department here to discuss those items.
Okay, great. Good morning.
Good morning. Ivana Salvador with the Chief Legislative Analyst's Office. Before you today is a request from Ms. Perry, Perry Garcetti, and this motion was introduced requesting this office, our CLA's office, to report to your committee relative to the submission of the Goodyear tract for approximately $29 million in ARA funds. According to the motion, the grant funds would be leveraged with current funds from the EDA as well as other local matches from the CLA. The report attaches some of the various projects that are located on this Goodyear tract, which is approximately 208-acre industrial site. The Goodyear site is bounded by Central, Slauson, and Florence Avenues, and Avalon Boulevard. The request is primarily to look into grants that may provide funds for storm drains, street restructuring, fiber optic repair, acquisition, clearing, paving, abandoned railroad, right-of-way parking, electrical upgrade, and undergrounding. The Goodyear tract, again, contains various projects at different stages of development, and what we recommend is that the Mayor's Office, the CAO, and the appropriate working group review and evaluate the various projects on the Goodyear tract as well as the individual projects, and report back with recommendations on eligibility on any of the grants and any funding potential, as well as we also recommend that the Ad Hoc Committee that the various departments of the working group present to this committee a list of various projects to be considered for the EDA grant, the Public Works and Economic Facilities grant. It's as much as we hear that there's lists being put together and the potential projects are already being considered.
Okay. Ms. Perry?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. As many of you already know, the Goodyear tract is one of the oldest industrial tracts in the city of Los Angeles, and it has been consistently used for industrial businesses since the early 20th century, with many of the same buildings and infrastructure in place since the early 20th century. The Goodyear tract has had a very difficult time attracting new businesses and private investments. It's about 270 acres in South Los Angeles, fully assembled. By making this critical infrastructure investment, we will be helping the existing businesses to become more efficient and productive, allowing them to stay competitive in a very unstable global economic market. In addition, the redevelopment agency has identified a number of opportunity sites, and we believe that these improvements will allow us to bring private investors to the Goodyear tract to construct new buildings and to bring new businesses and new job opportunities to South Los Angeles. The construction of these improvements would represent 148 construction jobs for South Los Angeles and prepare the foundation for new companies to invest in the industrial area, bringing an estimated or projected 500 new permanent jobs. And this is why I am so committed to pursuing this opportunity.
What have we been collecting at all any of the other kind of economic development or EDA potential grants? I know that a bunch of them are housing ones, so we've talked about some of those, but on an individual project basis, how are those funds in ARA being opened up or put out for bids for projects? Do we have that information?
maybe the mayor's office can respond to that.
Come on,
At the working group, we have not had a lot of information on these grants.
Jim Clark, Director of Federal Relations. We're still waiting on the eligibility requirements or the requirements for it. It's $150 million nationally that's for this. It indicates, though, under what was initially put out in the legislation, that this is priority consideration given to areas that experience sudden and severe economic dislocation and job loss due to corporate restructuring. So primarily, this money is going to go to areas that have recently had, like, a company plant close and people have lost a lot of jobs. We'll continue to follow this and see whether Goodyear or the other project that's on the list might qualify for it. But it's a limited amount of money, and it's geared toward specifically areas with plant closures.
Are there any other EDA tranches that we would qualify for economic development projects? Or
not under that, but there are other funding, like community development block grant funding, that we have considerable more money for.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know we have Commissioner Shaw here. Commissioner Shaw, did you want to speak on this? Did you want to speak on this, Commissioner Shaw?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry.
I was told you might want to say a word or two.
Over there.
Why don't you get from the table, if you don't mind?
Middle.
That way we can see you on the camera.
Everybody can see you. So your mother can see you. She knows you're working.
Thank you very much, Council. I'm here to support these Councilman Perry's suggestions on the Lansing site and also Central Avenue. These two projects are part of the South LA Initiative program that is the common agenda between the mayor and council members Parks, Perry, Weston, and Hahn. It's a 5-year strategic plan, 10 points, in the plan that are designed to enhance programs and projects in South LA. There are over 105 different programs and projects in this plan, and these two are a part of it. And I certainly just am here as a commissioner and one of the participants in the development of this plan to support her in what she's trying to do.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's it.
All right. Anything else, Ms. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let's recommend then. Do you want to move to have the consideration by the working group? Okay.
I'd like to just comment on Ms. Perry.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, I think this is exactly what we should be doing as we're in this incredible downturn, is identify areas that we can dramatically improve and change the dynamic, which wouldn't be changed any other way unless it was done through this. So I think your leadership on this means a lot, and obviously we get that money, you'll see a dramatic change in that neighborhood there. So it's a big plus. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rosendahl. Okay, without objection, we'll go ahead and move those two forward then. If we can take up 1A.
What about 3? You going to let me do 3?
Oh, sorry. I thought we were doing them together. But go ahead. Let's do number 3 then next.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Chairman, members of this committee, Rafael Breda with the CLA's office. We have the same recommendation with respect to this item as we did in number 2, as it deals with the Central Avenue Streetscape project, which is a $10 million project as estimated by DWP. The unmet need for this project is $4.5 million, and we've also identified the same funding source, the EDA's Public Works and Economic Development Grant Funds. So we'd like to ask that the Public Services Working Group take a look at this project in the context of the other projects that have been submitted and report back to this committee with respect to its viability and so forth.
Okay. Thank you again, Mr. President, and I wanted to put these comments on the record for those of you who may be unfamiliar with the work of the last 5 years. The South Los Angeles Initiative is a 5-year strategic plan which has identified Central Avenue as an important corridor for economic development and reinvestment, and in partnership with my office, the Redevelopment Agency, the Mayor's Office, and the Los Angeles Neighborhood Initiative have worked together for approximately 18 months in developing community outreach to develop the concept of a Central Avenue streetscape project, which would represent a $31 million investment in South LA. The streetscape project encompasses approximately 2.5 miles from Washington Boulevard to Slauson, and the streetscape improvements would provide public improvements that will support mobility, access options to residents, and assist in longer-term reuse and redevelopment of underutilized and vacant properties. And the main component of the streetscape program, and this is what's really critical, the removal of approximately 2.5 of overhead power facilities along Central Avenue. And this is very significant to South Los Angeles, an area that has been long neglected, long overlooked. Overhead power lines are just an indicator of a lack of pursuit and advocacy on behalf of the people who live there, because if you go into other parts of the city, they are not overwhelmed with overhead power lines. This will transform Central Avenue from a congested, automobile-oriented environment to one that has pedestrian accessibility and safety. Now, just to indicate how serious this is, the use of federal stimulus funds would be highly leveraged with other state, local, and private dollars to not only complete the improvements, but to encourage and to stimulate private investment. Now, we anticipate in the next 5 years, 11 housing projects will be constructed along Central Avenue. We already have 3 under construction right now, producing a minimum, and I say minimum, of 700 affordable units of family and senior housing. In addition to that, 149,000 square feet of new retail will also be developed, along with bringing 3 grocery stores to South Los Angeles and producing 340 full-time living wage jobs. 2 of those grocery stores' spaces have already been built out, and leases have been signed for 2 of them. The projects altogether represent $220 million of mostly private investment along Central Avenue that will bring 1,556 construction jobs to the area over the next 5 years. Committing $4.5 million in stimulus funds is not just filling a gap for an underground project. It is much more than that. It will transform a community, bring needed jobs to one of the areas in the city of Los Angeles hardest hit by foreclosures and loss of jobs. So I would appreciate the support of the committee and the city to work with us to identify these funds, which will enhance our chances of getting $30 million committed from State Prop 1C for the Streetscape project and to move this project forward.
Great. Any other questions or comments from other members? If not, we'll go ahead and oh yeah, Mr. Clark, sorry.
I wanted to also mention, too, that these are both worthwhile projects, and we've tried to find ways to be able to fund them first through, whether we could do it through federal earmarks in the appropriation, which the projects were basically too large projects to be able to take a significant bite out of them. Again, we'll look at this for the EDA, but we're also very pleased that yesterday, when President Obama released his budget, he has put in his budget $5 billion for an infrastructure bank, which is something that we're very much advocating for. So that would provide the kind of funding that we would be able to do projects like Goodyear and Central Avenue, and so we'll continue to advocate for inclusion of the infrastructure bank in the budget as it's passed this year.
Why don't we add that maybe to the instruction then to look at the infrastructure bank possibility of funding this as well, even though I'm sure that's just developing in the budget as well. Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll take up item 1A next. Electric trucks.
Sorry.
Ready to go? Good morning. Good morning. My name is Captain John Holmes, and I'm the Director of Operations at the Port of Los Angeles. And the 2 items, A and B, involve grant requests to the Department of Energy. Our goal with the grant request is to further reduce the emissions at the Port of Los Angeles. The total grant requests are $53 million. The total pot available from the Department of Energy is $678 million. There is they focus on really 3 areas. One is what we call AMP, or Alternative Marine Power, which is plugging ships in when they come in so they don't have to run their diesel generators. The second area is encouraging the use of the newest technology trucks, which would be LNG, CNG, or biofuel trucks. And the third is a demonstration project on electric trucks, a zero-emission electric truck program. The port has set aside $30 million in funds to provide any matching funds that are necessary, but we do believe that we should get some money from other sources to help us with the match. I think that's these are the first in a large number of grants that involve the truck program, about 11 total, but these are the first two that are due. One is due the 13th and the other is due the 30th of the month. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has about the projects.
Well, these are all very exciting projects that I think a number of us have worked on for some time, and congratulate the port on your aggressiveness in moving forward on this. The 25% match requirement, as I think what it says, that indicates, is that correct, that there's a 25% requirement, but we're looking at a 50% match?
It depends on the specific grant. Some of the grants, for example, in the Clean Cities grants, the repowering is a zero match, and some of the grants are recommended 50% match, but we have generally tried to budget a 25% match, and then with hopes that we're going to get some additional funding. We have applications into the California Energy Commission who indicates that they're going to help us on our match to a certain extent. So the calculus gets pretty complex.
We've never gone over what's required, though. We've never gone to 50% on a 25% requirement.
No, we've never gone.
Okay, so we're just matching the requirement
over a match. There are times when the Department of Energy or EPA indicates that preference is given to those who provide some match. So they may have a grant that's a zero match.
And we do a little something.
And we may decide to go 25% because it's one of the evaluation factors.
Sure.
As I say, the calculus when you start getting into all these grants is just very difficult to sort out.
Okay. And for the AMP piece, how large is the AMP grant that we're looking at, or the one that would help us install AMP? This is for the TRAPAC terminal?
It's an $11 million request for AMP, and we're actually involved in that grant application with 6 other ports, including Long Beach, Seattle, and a few others.
So we'd share a portion of that $11 million, or that's our share?
Total.
Yeah, the total. Go ahead.
My name is Christopher Patton. I'm an Environmental Affairs Officer with the Port of L.A. For the Shoreside Power Coalition grant, the entire amount being requested from the Department of Energy is $42 million for all participants. Okay, for our piece, we're the single largest requester of funds at 22. Our project is $22 million. Our 50% of that would be 11. So the entire request to DOE for all coalition partners is $42 million. We are hoping to get approximately 25% of that.
And are we doing this together just for interoperability reasons, or what's the...
The grant itself requires that this is an electrification technology grant, and it requires that you implement that technology at multiple locations, different geographic and climatic locations. And that's why we reached out to the other West Coast ports. I think the really exciting thing about this is that we've now put together Seattle, Tacoma, Oakland, San Francisco, LA, and Long Beach, stepping up to use shoreside power, which is really excellent development.
Yeah, absolutely. I was part of the delegation that signed the first agreement with China Shipping way back in 2002, I think. Was 2002 the first agreement we had? And it's been obviously a very exciting thing to see the port continue moving forward on that. Mr. Rosendahl or Mr. Parks, do you have questions?
Do we have a plan too in case the CEC does not come forward with the matching funds?
Yes, sir. We have set aside the money for full match of all the grants. We're just and a lot of that revenue is we'll take about $30 million in revenue in the truck program this year. So we've set aside the money for the 50% match, but we're in hopes that we're going to get a portion of the match from either CEC or a number of other sources.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. there's no other questions, let's go ahead then, and thank you for, Mr. Rosenthal?
Good. This is 21 million we're looking for? Am I wrong on this or not?
21 in the first grant, yes, an A, yes.
Yeah, and it's a total of 42?
42 million.
Okay. Obviously, has any conversations happened with Ms. Hahn? I know she's not here right now since the port.
With respect to the grant,
where this is going, how it's doing, and so forth.
As you're aware, she's very close to the truck program in general. I have not had the opportunity to discuss specifics of the grants. We're on a fairly accelerated schedule.
My suggestion is, just as a matter of protocol, since it's like Ms. Perry was very clear about where she is, it's important that you do bring her into the loop, and I would suggest you do that forthwith after this discussion. It's important that she buys into this as much as we do. I like it. It's a no-brainer for me. Anything we can do to enhance the major port in America, I mean, come on, this is where it's all happening, is a good thing. And so, but I just make that point.
I think that's wise advice, sir. I will heed that.
Great.
And I think we're particularly excited based on the fact that one of the larger parts of the grants is the electric truck grant, and that's a technology developed right in Harbor City.
Right.
We have a coalition put together of the largest terminal operators in the country and some of the largest trucking companies to make this electric truck a successful short haul.
When we say that, we all went to the mayor's State of the City address. And wasn't that the manufacturer of
that? Is Balcon.
Are we saying that we would be supporting his operation, or do we go out to competitive bid and there's others? How do we go about this whole electric truck?
He is the only Class 8 electric truck manufacturer in the country.
Wow.
There are other truck manufacturers that do what they call Class 6 trucks, which are large delivery. Mr. Samra is the only person that has developed the technology to enable a Class 8 electric truck to work in the short-haul drayage business.
Very interesting.
There's a lot of excitement about it, and one of the things, actually last night, the Board of Harbor Commissioners approved two items, one which is the funding for matching on the grants, and the other is the newest prototype battery technology. So we're going to move from the lead-acid batteries to the lithium batteries in the electric truck, which should give it a range which would make it very successful in terminal operations and short-haul drayage.
Now, there's been some foreign countries talking electric trucks. They've been banging on the doors of us. The Chinese through American intermediaries. There's trucks they've wanted me to see, which I haven't seen those trucks, and they take an interest with me over not only the harbor but the airport and the electric trucks. Will the funding just go directly to this? How does it work with our own manufacturer versus foreign countries that might be more competitive, that might have plants here? I just want to make sure everything is clear.
The way that the program is written is funding will be set aside, and technically it could be anybody who makes an electric truck. And what we do is subsidize, we arrange the terminal operators and trucking companies, we get the people together, and then if they decide to purchase the electric truck, we subsidize the cost of the electric truck to make it such that there's not a incredible cost differential between buying a diesel truck and buying an electric truck.
That's exciting. That's very good. Do you have any sensing of the kinds of jobs this might stimulate?
Well, when this takes off, Balcon will move from a sort of small, sleepy kind of manufacturing place to they'll be manufacturing not only the trucks, but they'll be assembling the batteries there. So there's a possibility of actually two separate sort of manufacturing entities. One is the truck entity, and with the lithium batteries, it's not like a lead-acid battery. You assemble all the cells, so you have to buy the cells. So Balcon has partnered with a company in the Bay Area. So not only will the trucks be made in the port area, but the batteries will be provided by a California company as well.
And that's all music to my ears too. Just for my own and for those watching this, does all this money go through the state, the $50 billion figure we heard before, and Laura Chick in that role there as it's dispersed. So is that another way, or is this going, or we apply directly for the port? How does that work with the state?
We apply directly with the Department of Energy, and then the money is provided to us directly on a reimbursable basis. So as you accrue costs, then they reimburse you for the costs.
I see. So then the public transparency and all of this stuff is done by us with that vendor rather than through her operation?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then my only caution on that is make sure everything stands that test up there of clarity, because I have a feeling, not our city or any of the things we've talked about, but as Barack Obama pumps these billions into the pipe throughout the nation, a lot of folks are going to look at who got what deal and why and what kind of playback, if any, or so on and so forth. And I certainly want the city of Los Angeles to be as clean as a hen's tooth. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Just one last note. So the battery technology piece is just to look at the exploration of existing lithium battery technology for, right now, is lead-acid batteries in the electric trucks?
The first prototype truck was a dual-axle lead-acid battery truck, and we had it working in the terminals, and the terminal operators liked the truck, but they had fundamentally two difficulties. One was the turning radius, which we got another chassis to solve that problem. And the second is the difficulty with the length of time that the truck could operate on lead-acid batteries. And in the port environment, as I'm sure you're aware, things have to go pretty much, if they can't work an entire work shift, it's very difficult to stop in the middle of the work shift and go and plug something in, particularly with lead-acid batteries, which charge very slowly. So after the first round of testing, we knew we had to go to a different battery technology, and the lithium batteries are 1/3 the weight of the lead-acid batteries, and you can, put a double pack of lithium and operate a truck in a terminal or in the short-haul drayage for an entire work shift. And they also charge very rapidly, so you can put a very fast charge into them. So, one of the reasons that in this phase we have put together this sort of consortium of terminal operators and trucking companies is because we have a company that's got a great technology, and we want to truly vet this technology with the people that are using it and use it on a day-to-day basis. So the lithium batteries, we feel, and the calculations are, will run an entire work shift and have a range of over 100 miles. So that also takes care of a lot of most of the drays at the port are under 25 miles. Mm-hmm. So if we can achieve both of those goals, we can make the electric truck, viable as a port drayage vehicle and terminal vehicle. And when you do the numbers over the life of the truck life cycle cost, even though the batteries are very expensive at this time, given the fact that the cost of a mile when you use electricity versus a mile when you use diesel, that's electric cost is so much less, particularly if you can charge during off-peak hours. Mm-hmm. So we feel like working on this, we can prove the viability of this concept, and that's what's pretty exciting, actually.
And the batteries that Balcon is looking at, are those Chinese lithium batteries right now? I know there's a substantial part of our ARRA was for battery technology development here in the United States, which is something we've worked with closely. A couple companies, I know the Miles Electric Car Company, which is looking at that, was a big lobbyist for that, because there's a subsidy of about, I think, $180 million or so in China for the development of this battery technology, which is evolving. Wouldn't take much to do that here, and the president very wisely put that in the budget to see, because whoever makes the breakthroughs on the battery technology will own the technology, will own the fuel. Was there any allusion to that in the application?
And that's very interesting and a great comment. We would love to work work with a truly U.S. manufacturer on the batteries. At the present time, as you seem to know quite a bit about this, the major manufacturers are in Korea and China. I think the first set of lithium prototype batteries, we bought 2 sets, which should be delivered this week, are from China, a U.S. company that buys their batteries from China. I think that for our purposes, if we could have a discussion about perhaps a U.S. manufacturer, we would prefer to do that, but at the present time, we're going pretty much with the major source of the batteries, which is Chinese.
Well, we can connect you, and I know the mayor's office, and the mayor's been in contact with them too, with Miles Rubin, who is one of the leading, he's the president of the Miles car company that's looking to assemble about half of the car here in Los Angeles. The other half is made in China, but probably one of the leading experts on some of the battery technology and the companies that are trying to do that here. So it may be a little premature for us to find that, but in the grant application, it may give some extra juice to it to allude to that, we would love to be, working hand in hand with any of the emerging battery researchers here in the United States too. So
I think that's a great idea, and you are right that the 2 critical components obviously are the battery technology and then the battery management technology for the electronics. And I think that the company we're working with, Balcon, has done a great job on the battery management and the motor technology. But if we could marry that with a U.S. battery technology, I mean, that would be a total home run as far as this electric truck goes.
Sure. Okay, great. Any other questions, colleagues? Okay. Yes, sir. Okay, great. All right. You're leaning in. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead and note and file that as well, and look forward to the report back of a hopefully successful application on both fronts. Okay. Thank you. Do we have any public comment cards? Yeah. Oh, CEO, give us an update on the other one, the overview. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
Good morning. I asked the Port of LA to stay at the table if possible. Let me give you a quick overview of where we are in the project, and that I wanted to mention also that there was a grant application that was due April 28th for the Maersk Electron Beam Flue Gas Treatment System that they've actually decided not to submit that, and there's a very good reason for that, but I thought possibly the department may want to talk about that. Well, since you're here, if it's okay, we'll just go ahead with that.
Sure. Certainly. We had high hopes to do a project with our major terminal operator, Maersk, which is, as you know, the 2 biggest causes of pollution at the port are the ships idling when they're in port and then the trucks idling and running in the port. So there's 2 ways to deal with the ship problem. One is the AMP projects, which are basically a large extension cord where you plug the ships in, but many of our ships are not regular customers, so for them to make install all of the circuit and electronics for an AMP project is not cost effective. So Maersk wanted to move forward on another technology, which is basically a sort of a bonnet that you put over the stack, and it scrubs the exhaust and achieves the same goal but in a different way. And we had high hopes that was going to happen, but it's contingent upon the technology that Maersk was using would be put on the EPA list. And unfortunately, they didn't get it on in time for this submittal. But the reality is, there's going to be numerous resubmittals of a lot of these grants, as you know, and we're hoping that Maersk is going to get their EPA certification, and then we will go in with them. We also have a number of other terminal operators that would like to do similar projects, whether they're AMP-type projects or scrubber-type projects, and we've made a commitment that we're going to work with them as well.
What percentage of the ships, by the way, that come in would not be AMP viable in the near future?
What would we do?
What percentage of the ships, when you're saying, most of them where it's not viable for them, is that 2/3, 3/4, half?
No, it's smaller than that. The largest, by far the largest number of calls to the port are cruise and container, and those are the ones that we turn to be AMP ready. You may have an infrequent visitor or an invitee, like Captain Holmes was referring to, in that vessel class, but by and large it's those classes that we're targeting to be AMP ready. At the port, approximately, say, 12% are what we call general cargo. Those are the ones that may come here once a year, even less frequently. Those are the ones where it's just not cost-effective or feasible for them to be AMP-ready. This would be a technology that they could use.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
I just wanted to give you an update on this was kind of a quiet week, actually, so that we only had the 2 applications, but things are going to start heating up next week for the committee. Just to give you a heads up, I think you've got maybe 4 or 5 different program categories with some multiple grants that you'll be dealing with. We just received from the federal government, started to release now the eligibility requirements and the program guidelines for a number of programs that will be competitive programs. One is the Neighborhood Stabilization Program. That's a $2 billion program. They just released that day before yesterday. Yesterday they released the Community Development Block Grant. That's $19 million that will be, that's a formula grant, but they released the guidelines on that. And then what we were referring to before as the Big and Good, or the Transportation Discretionary Grant, the $1.5 billion, we're anticipating that that's going to be released on May 17th. They've named that TIGER. It stands for Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery. I think there's just an office back in D.C. that does nothing but...
Will there be Tiger teams?
There'll be Tiger Team, right, exactly, Tiger Team. And not to be confused with another grant which is called Tigger. So we have Tigger and Tiger that we'll be dealing with. But we just wanted to let you know that. Also wanted to give you a brief update on the weatherization, the state weatherization plan. As you know, you passed a resolution in council supporting the opportunity for the city to be able to apply for these funds. That was delivered to the public hearing along with a letter from our office, and Jim DeBoo in our Sacramento office appeared at the hearing. There was a subsequent meeting yesterday with legislative leadership, the Community Services Department, and representatives from what are called these 44 local service providers, of which there are 3 in Los Angeles County. They continue to make the argument that they felt they could handle the money, even though it's 50 times the amount of money that they've normally dealt with. What we learned also, though, too, is that the legislature will have to accept these funds. So they're going ahead and filing a state plan that's due on the 12th. The state legislature will have to accept the money when it comes from the feds. There'll be an opportunity then to make some changes to it. And there's only going to be about 40% of the funds distributed initially, and then there'll be a second round of funding for this too, so it's not going to come all at one time. So we'll get a couple of bites at the apple. We also found out too that and I forget the acronym, but PACE, that organization has the responsibility for all of LA City, so just one organization covers all of LA City. So they think that one of the things that we might be able to do is actually have the city subcontract with PACE as an organization to be able to distribute it, and then we in turn could subcontract out to other. So we'll continue to follow that and let you know what's happening on that.
I have a question. I know there's a document, I think, that's going to go in council today, which is the CSBG dollars.
Correct.
That's going to go as part of either the consolidate or the issue that's with CDD and so forth. And it's about, I think, $12 million.
Yes, we're quite excited. It's more than we thought we would be getting. The problem was that they gave us the notice, I think, on Tuesday or something, and said we basically have to put our plan together by Monday. Yeah, so they gave us less than a week to put a plan together for this.
They tell you, like even a month ago, CSBG is coming out, and there's at least some general idea, because these are some great programs and a lot of money that's going into it.
Right.
But all of a sudden you go, wow, we're gonna spend $2 million here and $1 million here and 2.6, and as we look at our budget every day with Mr. Parks there, it is, you kind of go, is this, none of these programs, something's wrong with them, but is this the priority we want to do in a 3-day period of time? This is where we're going to be putting our money versus other things.
We'll have Robert Sines with Community Development Department.
Good morning. Robert Sines, CDD. Many of these projects have actually been vetted through the HCD committee as part of the Family Source discussion, so they are not new programs or new program ideas.
Right.
In terms of the rush, in terms of the plan, I believe that council will have a fuller discussion, that we're asking just for the authority to submit the plan to the state with a caveat that we're going through the city council process for the full vetting and authority. So we still have a chance to have full
Massage
vetting.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. But many of the program items have been discussed through the HCD process.
And I know, and I think my staff has talked to you, I'm going to have a question about child care.
And we have that identified.
I know you have money, but the real question is, I was just mentioning to Mr. Garcetti here, we were chatting about it, because there is $1.5 million, which I'm happy about, and but it says still for non-family source core services.
Right.
That's my problem is, I do think disability and child care, which have been services that we've provided, and although there are additional funding, I think identifying those particular areas as non-core services sets it up problematically. I'm not in the future. So we'll have that discussion, because I'm going to call that item special in council. But
we did change the language to specialized services, but
okay, because in this document, the May 8th one, it has non-family service source core services. So in this document.
Okay. Mr. Parks?
Mr. Chair, one thing I'd like to see, and I know someone's working on a computerized tracking system, but when we deal with these incrementally, we don't have a sense of the overall impact of things that we're saying, matching funds, or the impact on the general fund, or those things that could come back later. When these come back, then we back into the priority situation. I just would like to emphasize that we get that tracking mechanism, and if the matching funds are going to come from another source, or if we're relying on the general fund, we need to know that as this cumulative package gets rolling, because at some point in time, looking at them individually, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but once you accumulate it, and if we are responsible for the matching out of the general fund, we may have to look at some of these things differently.
Criteria restrictions column. That's where we work to have everything detailed. You're right that there's no kind of running amount. I mean, I think all of these so far that I've seen are with existing or specialized funds. Where we do have anything from general fund, though, if you could pull that out in those notes to make that just very specific. And then if it is existing general fund, that's already there. Yeah.
I think during the budget hearings, ITA said they were given the task of setting some kind of a monitoring system. But as we have these weekly meetings, I think it'd be important to know what's come forward, what's added to it, so at least we have a running tally.
If I might speak to that, Mr. Parks, Mr. Garcetti, yes. The first thing we can do immediately, I can just add a column in the spreadsheet that will reflect those matching funds and whether they're general fund requirements. That's very easy to do. I can do that right away. Should have thought of that before.
And we'd have a cumulative view of it.
Exactly. We'd have a running total at the bottom for each of those categories and a running total for the entire grant process. In addition to that, we are working with ITA and the Controller's Office on a tracking system. We do hope to have an interim solution on board next week, and then we're working on a long-term solution as well, both of which can reflect this information separately from the overall grants. So we'll do that right away, which might segue into the final piece. I'm just giving an overall status, if you will. I believe that Mr. Clark mentioned that this coming week, since the last ad hoc committee last Friday, there have been no grant applications submitted, but we're looking at 4 or 5 to be submitted in the following week between now and next Friday's ad hoc committee. So far, we have 16 applications that have been submitted for a total request of $296 million, so almost $300 million that we've applied for. Not to say we'll get every dollar of that, but of those 16 applications, we have $296,500,000 that we're requesting. I did mention that we have 4 or 5 applications coming up this week, so that would be pretty much the gist of my status report. And we will work immediately on what Mr. Parks mentioned.
Mr. Rosenau?
And another step. we're televising these meetings for a purpose, and the televising of it is to connect to the people outside of this room and to know two things. A, we're vigorously going for stimulus money, and two, the specific projects that we're tying it into that we see value in. Are we putting this on some kind of a public notice where they can go online and track it as well? What's been submitted, what hasn't been submitted, and status of some of this?
Yes, right now we have the spreadsheet. We actually have 3 spreadsheets. One is the master spreadsheet that shows everything. A second spreadsheet is a subset of that, shows every grant that we've applied for to date. Third, we have another spreadsheet that shows items that we're partnering with other agencies where the city is not a lead agency. That's on the internet. Also, there's a pointer on the intranet to point city staff to that. We update that frequently. We will update it today as well with the most recent information.
And what we do in my staff is we have a link on our website to your link, so that one can just click on it, because I want to make it as user-friendly as possible. Not everybody is a wizard with texting each other all day long, like a lot of people are constantly texting each other. We have a lot of folks that very basically can turn it on and click and that kind of thing. So we want to make it as simple as possible for the transparency.
That was our intent. I hope it is. If you find it's not, we can certainly work on that. But yes, we'll be doing an update after this meeting as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, and that, again, that website is recovery.lacity.org?
Yes it is. We're calling it LA Recovery on the intranet.
Right,
yes.
but for the members of the public who'd like to visit that website, it's recovery.lacity.org.
That is correct, yes.
Great. All right, thank you for the updates.
Thank you very much.
This meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee on Economic Recovery and Reinvestment is adjourned. Thank you.